1 in every 3 women will experience physical or sexual violence in her lifetime. It's time to step up, to be strong, and be there for those who need us. Survival is possible. I'm Mandy Moore. Join me and PSI Caribbean. Take action, speak out, make it stop.
Gender-based violence, oftentimes people consider as violence against women. Violence against women is a subset of gender-based violence, but what gender-based violence is violence that is inflicted on a person based on their gender. That considers also transgendered persons of different sexual orientations.
There are different types of gender-based violence. So the type of gender-based violence that PSI is really focusing on is intimate partner violence. That's violence that occurs in intimate partner relationships, husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends, as well as domestic violence, which happens in the home.
So certainly this is not necessarily just about the feminist movement, about women specifically, but is about the value of a human being and the right for them to be free from violence at any stage of their life, regardless of their status.
When we talk about gender-based violence, it's clear that we don't want it to seem that it's just a problem, an isolated problem in this country or this region, but it's a global problem. And there's a need to not look at just putting systems in place that address the issues after they happen. So domestic violence acts, which put protection orders, all those things are very important. But here at PSI, we're looking at what can we do to prevent gender-based violence from occurring in the first place.
We are one in the top 5 in terms of, our rates of rape and different forms of violence against women and gender-based violence. So it's very, very pervasive and it's almost normalized in the Caribbean and in Trinidad specifically.
More importantly than the statistics is that gender-based violence isn't something new. It is a problem that has existed since time immemorial. The challenge with it is that it's become normalized, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, not only in the Caribbean, worldwide.
We've been fortunate to have a fantastic donor who's focused on this area. Her name is Indrani Goradia, and she's really pioneered this work, not just in the Caribbean, but PSI globally, and she's really a force to be reckoned with, and we're fortunate to have her on board.
I'm really happy to be with PSI, and my initiatives are in 2 countries, in India and in Trinidad and Tobago. We really want to educate the young people on gender norms.
Indrani is like family. Her mission, her drive, her strength and her charisma is really an inspiration on the ground for the work that we're doing. And Mandy was just a joy. It was, she has embraced as her role as PSI ambassador what PSI Global is trying to do across the world.
I've been a global ambassador for PSI for the last 5.5 years around issues pertaining to child and maternal health. And with them, I've traveled to South Sudan, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Myanmar, Trinidad, and Tanzania.
They didn't just want to come and just launch our project, but they really wanted to understand the landscape of gender-based violence in Trinidad.
During my trip to Trinidad, I was able to see some of the HIV prevention programs initially, and then we sort of switched focuses and gears and were able to see programs that were already sort of up and running here in Trinidad, services that were available to women who were victims and survivors of domestic violence. So we visited a shelter, a safe house for survivors of domestic violence called The Shelter. We visited a birthing center with midwives who specialize and are trained in sort of asking women when they're administered to the facility whether or not they've experienced domestic violence, called Mama Totos. We also visited, had sort of a roundtable discussion with a bunch of youth Indrani led this sort of session with them and sort of talked about gender norms and negative gender norms and how we sort of can approach that and start to change those negative gender norms.
And when we talk about gender violence, we don't mean women. We mean human violence. Unfortunately, the majority of violence is against a woman, but there are men who are suffering. And I do also believe that men who choose to abuse don't choose to abuse with full intention of being abusive. They don't know what to do.
When we talk about gender-based violence, we tend to exclude the men, or we see the men as perpetrators. But a lot of men, even as a perpetrator, is a call for help. How do we provide support for men in need? And I don't only mean as victims themselves, but possibly as perpetrators. How do we get them to recognize that there is support services for them?
I spoke to a group of 20 young people from Trinidad a few days ago, and I asked, who of you has experienced violence? Every single hand went up.
I'm a mother myself, and I'm very adamant about speaking to my children about when we have conflicts and when we're dealing with anger, there are healthy ways to do it and there are healthy ways, but there are unhealthy ways to do so. So speaking to children, speaking with them, not at them, but helping them as well to understand the forces that are taking place and how you manage conflict and the respect between boys and girls. Oftentimes we speak of women and men as dealing with this issue, but we are a culture that our violence is so normal, but we have to be able to change that, and we can.
One of our big initiatives is our youth empowerment program. So we've developed a youth curriculum, which is a 12-session curriculum, which we will be taking into schools and institutions that provide services to young people and rolling out this program. That's really a key preventative initiative.
This has been a fantastic journey for us, but also one that we've seen needs a lot of attention because there are partners that are working in this area in Trinidad and Tobago, and we've been connecting with them strongly. And to highlight the project that we'll be doing, and we were able to launch our project called Make It Stop. This is a campaign that's focusing on gender-based violence prevention efforts through PSI Caribbean.
Our intent is to make violence stop.
When it comes to the Make It Stop campaign, what I find most interesting is that PSI here in Trinidad has gotten with groups that are already on the ground offering services to the community in the gender-based violence sort of community, and have figured out what the gaps are and what the needs are and sort of bridged those together and created an entire campaign, the Make It Stop campaign, around those needs.
Community is very important as well when we're looking at violence. What is the paradigm that we have and that we're continuing in generations as well? So we're working with our community groups also, really to dig into these issues. We are not going to see an overnight success. This is not something that is a quick fix. We are continuing work that people have been doing for a long time, but we see a critical element where social marketing is concerned. That is PSI's strength.
I think we're at the point of deep awareness. I think social media is making the whole world realize, whoa, this is a problem that is bigger than anyone expected. Just, the 20 kids in the one room in Trinidad, a statistical sampling. 100% of them, it's not just here, it's everywhere.
We need to all join and rally around this issue, to provide support for survivors, for victims, for perpetrators, because the only way we can effectively address this issue is that we have to address we have to include our men in our prevention initiatives, as well as young people, as well as parents, as well as the actual victims and survivors.
Young people have to speak up. Young people cannot accept, it's always been like that, it always will be like that, I don't have a choice. In my life at 50, I changed my paradigm. I think everybody can change.
There are ways that I can make and stop. I could reach out for help. 800-SAVE, other resources are in Trinidad and Tobago, and we need to remember that. And we need to support persons. Talk to your peers. Talk to persons about the issue. And we need to bring it to the fore so we can deal with it from now.
I think when it comes to gender-based violence, we know intrinsically that empowering and lifting women and girls is linked to building stronger economies, stronger communities. So we can't begin to address those issues until we address health issues, and health and violence are so, again, intrinsically linked.
Yes, we're talking about Make It Stop in intimate partner relationships, and domestic violence cases. But it is really a rallying call for all citizens in Trinidad and Tobago to come together and say, you know what? We are putting an end to violence, and we are providing them with the tools and the skills to do that, and the support that is needed to prevent violence in Trinidad and Tobago. So I ask you to please join PSI Caribbean in making it stop.